Welcome back from the break. We are getting into our fourth matchup and one that personally I'm very excited for. It's Gaimin Gladiators taking on Luminosity, the I guess projected number one, or not literally the number one coming in from last stage. But Gaimin Gladiators, forceful. This roster, you'll see it pop up in a second. Very, very good on paper. Not very good, at least so far, in execution.
Hey, one play day. I've said this all day. It's only been like one weekend. Lots of seeds left to play. This is a roster that, like you said, on paper looks really dominant. You know, they made some big roster moves over the offseason. They brought in Rudy. They brought in Barring. You know, Barring in stage one was an excellent entry player, and now on this team, you know, he's kind of stalling a little bit. And then they brought in Rudy. They put him on support role. You know, he used to play with the old East Coast roster before they became Beast Coast, and he looked really good in that part. And now this roster, like on paper, every single person in every single role is a great Challenger League player in their respective role, whether that's Courts on the sledge, whether that's Arrow on the flank watch. You know, they have a really strong roster altogether, and yet they're at the bottom of the leaderboard. You know, they've got a -8 differential, and they're 0-2. They haven't been looking particularly great. This is one of those weekends where, you know, they really need to kind of step up their game if they're looking to have any hopes of making playoffs at the end of the stage, or at the end of the year.
Yeah, and then we look over to Luminosity. Connor, they're 1-2. They're sitting in 6th right now, but mind you, those 2 losses, rent free and 1 shot. So not the worst, to be honest. Like, those are 2 very formidable teams.
Yes, I'm going to use the word and the wonderful phrase quality losses, because those are some pretty dang quality losses because of how close they were, and a couple of rounds went differently. Luminosity, all of a sudden you're seeing that L turn into a W, and then they're sitting a lot prettier. But with the inclusion of Asian coming into this roster, goodbye Splash. It's been rough for him. Actually, no, it hasn't. He's been doing incredibly well on Nocturnes, but you still have an incredibly strong entry core now with Ferda, backed up by Asian. Ferda, he was the number one entry last stage. He's kind of like hands down, no question. It was kind of between him and Kento, but statistically it was Ferda. Kind of like eye test was a little bit more Kento. But now he also has Asian back behind him, and he still has enough flexibility on his roles that Ferda can play something like the Osa that you see he's been playing a lot, and bringing a lot more of a utility-focused, team-oriented gameplay to Luminosity. And he also can pick up the Finka LMG and let it go burr anytime he wants to.
Absolutely. It's how true that is. Now, with Gaimin Gladiators, what are their keys to success? What are some things that they need to do to turn this ship around? I know I'm saying turn the ship around like they're in the dumps, and they are. You know what I'm getting at here.
They are. They have not left the harbor yet.
I don't think you can sit at the bottom of the leaderboard.
The ship can't sink if it hasn't gone out.
There you go. I mean, you can't be at the bottom of the leaderboard and not like sit there and go, okay, now is the time to change. This is a roster, like we said, they've got some really key talented players. You know, Courts has been, however, the only player that's kind of popping off. I mean, last play day, he dropped 15 kills and no one else was even on the board to be seen. So the big critical point I'm looking for when it comes to Gaimin Gladiators is I need everybody to kind of step up their game and be consistent round after round, because right now it's just a lack of consistency overall. And then the second big point is, like, I know I kind of talked about it when I talked about the roster, but this is the time. Now this roster, they didn't make top 4 in stage 1. They dug a 6-point deficit from the 4th place team, right, when they were playing in the middle of the pack. And now, having lost 2 more games, that 6-point deficit is now a 12-point deficit. Only the top 4 teams are going to make it into playoffs. If this team wants any chance of making playoffs, this is the game. They need to turn it back, and they've got what it looks to be a struggling LG roster on the other side, who is also looking to do the exact same thing. Connor, what do you think?
For the side of Luminosity, I think you saying that they're struggling is completely wrong, because despite the results, this team is definitely an upgrade from what we saw last stage. And last stage, they had enough talent to win and be in first place. Unfortunately, you have teams like Rent Free and One Shot really bolstering up their skill as well, so they might have leapfrogged them just a little bit. But with how Luminosity is playing with the inclusion of Asian, they look so much more dynamic. The micro plays that we like to see out of them, what they like to employ, all of a sudden they're not just 1 or 2 people going for a cheeky kill and maybe pushing in the site and going 1 for 1 and dying on the attacking side. Now all of a sudden it's a coordinated push out of seemingly nowhere. The team is playing off of each other so well. Tanner, we've noticed it so much. And one of the biggest things that we and you talk about is, guess what? What does Luminosity like to play for? on their attacks. That's the one thing that they look for.
They look for those picks every single
Yes,
time.
they do. And guess who is a prime candidate to get picked every single attacking round early? Starts with a B, and it is Barring. I think this is a very ideal matchup for Luminosity if Barring doesn't wake up to be the player that we know he can be.
Now, what's the ideal matchup, Tanner, for these teams and maps? What maps do they want to see? What maps do they not want to go to?
Well, I know for the side of Luminosity, like their map pool is completely different than it was in stage 1. We saw them playing Bank last week, and they looked really good. Even though it was an overtime loss and a comeback victory to Rent Free, they still looked very good. So, you know, Bank being banned here, I actually like that ban for them because it's the recent VOD footage. It kind of gets removed. For the side of Gaimin Gladiators, I think they're trying to aim towards those clubhouses and those Oregons. Those are typically the maps they like to comfort play and play around. And if I'm Luminosity, I'm going to try and outright get rid of them and try and take them to a map like Chalet, which is banned, Clubhouse is banned. So, you know, a map that is not in their comfort zone. Looks like what we have left here, we have Oregon and Border, and it's going to Luminosity. And oh man, this is, wow. That's okay. So this is impressive. So Oregon Luminosity played in stage 1 6 different times, and they won, I believe, 5 out of the 6 times. It's one of their comfort maps. The fact that they're willing to go to a new map again, Border, is just adding like that randomness factor to not necessarily randomness, but if you're an opponent looking at them and you're trying to scout them and you're trying to prepare, it's not something that you're used to seeing. A map that they have, there's no information on it. So the fact that LG is willing to go to these maps that they have no info on is actually very favorable for them. And I think, but at the same, man, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but at the same time, Gaimin Gladiators, if you like the comfort maps, if you like the Oregons, you like the Clubhouse, Border is the same thing. So I think this is shaping up to be a very good match for two teams that both want to rebound for this week.
Well, Connor, as these predictions come in, it's interesting that he points that out, because the first 2 maps they get rid of are the ones they've played this stage. Take those VODs off the board. And then the next 2 are the ones like we're getting rid of those comfort picks. So it's going to be interesting to see. Now, we do have Luminosity across the board here. You know, is this, Tanner, is this the way it's going to go? Is it this cut and dry? Is it this obvious?
It's not this obvious, I will say that. I mean, the big thing Gaimin's got going for them
Yes,
is we only saw, well, I got to make an argument here, all right? I think LG is going to win it, to be clear. But Gaimin, we've only seen 1 game of them on stream. They did not look good, but that's 1 best of 1. These are best of 1s. Anything can change. It's an equalizer map. It's really who is feeling hotter on the day. And if LG is not feeling as hot as they were, like we saw on Playday 2, where they dropped the ball versus Rent Free, then maybe Gaming is going to have the chance to come back. That being said, my faith is still on LG. I like their coaching staff. I like the players. I like the roster that they have. I don't know if Gaimin Gladiators is going to be able to shoot back at the same level, and I think that might be the deciding factor.
Any final thoughts before we send this away, Connor?
I think for the side of Gaimin Gladiators that this is a map that they did not foresee by any stretch of the imagination. The ban phase from Luminosity was very tricky, and I liked it a lot. Instantly ban out the maps that you've played. That's kind of been something that they've started doing, and it's sort of a trend that we can see from Playday to Playday of, hey, they went to Chalet, then they went to Chalet again, but then guess what? Their first ban, the 3rd game, was Chalet. And then now, coming in again after they played Bank, their first 2 bans are Bank and Chalet. They don't want to give that additional ammunition to a team like Gaimin Gladiators with still a solid support staff in the form of Foxy. But now you kind of go, and if you're Gaimin Gladiators, you're like, yeah, we backed them down. We're going to go to Oregon. That's what we know they'll pick. Look at them last stage. They were an Oregon team. We know what we can get into. Then all of a sudden, boom, you're going to Border, and it's like, uh-oh, I did not foresee this circumstance happening. And they're starting to shake. I think Luminosity has them right where they want them.
Absolutely.
Well, let's send it over to John and Carter, because this screams confidence on the side of Luminosity, and I'm excited to see if that carries over into the match. Take it away, boys.
Well, if it does scream confidence, I know John and I are hoping for a little bit more of an active performance from Asian. Definitely one of the hottest pickups coming into CL, and overall, I mean, he's had a fine stage. I believe top 2 on his team, but John, it's Asian. If we're going to have confidence in this game, I'm hoping to finally have a performance that is similar to what we hoped he would have in the season going forward.
Especially when you are just stacking with pretty much all your friends at this point. Like, Asian has played with a good chunk of the teammates he's rocking with now, all the way back in T3. Like, it's really not a shocker that he got picked up by Luminosity. It was almost a dead giveaway for most people, and I kind of felt like it was almost a dead giveaway that at some point Luminosity would want to go to Border. They had a lot of success last stage on this map. They played it quite frequently, and for Gaming, I think Connor's point was really pretty much on the head at that point of, oh, wow, I forgot Border's in the pool here. We could potentially get messed up because of that. And yeah, this is honestly just the ace in the sleeve for Luminosity. This should, on paper, again, be a win for Luminosity, but Gaimin Gladiators, they have been able to upset in the past, pardon, so this could be one of those potential moments where they, in fact, do that and finally get their stride back.
Well, Luminosity will start out on the defense on Border, and they'll have a little bit of an advantage of maybe being able to use some of the aggressive fights the defense is forced to take in places like CCTV or inside of office. Band starting out, of course, nothing to be surprised with so far. Thatcher, the first gone. When we go to the defense, Luminosity have banned a lot of Valkyrie on their various games so far, so might be something we'll see happen. For Gaimin, I imagine we'll probably follow up with maybe a Nook just to counter out some play from Luminosity, but nope, instead we'll go with the Osa ban, which is still something that we actually see fairly regularly on Border, at least in comparison to other maps.
She can be pretty effective. You know, for example, Bathroom and Tellers, you want to get that Teller single wall opened up, put down a Talon shield and go in for that defuse. Again, those long lines of sights as well can be countered quite well just via a singular Talon shield and just having someone consistently watch that position. And an interesting final ban as well for the Silent Luminosity. Having out the castle removed, definitely a pretty, I would say a pretty unusual one, but it does make sense. He can be used quite a lot for those extensions that you tend to see on Border, so this could completely change up the way that this map altogether is played, besides the fact that Azami is still an option and could try to replicate some of those extensions just in a different manner.
Yeah, Azami, the thing with Azami on Border is a lot of the times you'll see her concentrated in a specific position, and a lot of those keep barriers in that spot as a result. Say, hiding inside a CCTV, throwing keeper barriers on windows or doorways or on the table to try to create shields. With the castle, you have, of course, a lot of versatility, like Azami, but given the nature of the operator, Azami is very active. You need to use it, or if you're going to play specific positions, you can really only use the utility in that area, as opposed to the castle. In the prep phase, you can put those castle barricades wherever you want in all different spots on the map. So with that off the board, sure, you're going to have to worry about the Azami, but once you nail her down to a specific position, odds are that's where her presence and the main focus of her utility is going to be. Unsurprisingly, we will have an extension on Tellers and Bathroom, which is a site that you definitely need to roam on, as it's very hard to sit in the site and anchor on it, and as a result, Luminosity will be in Office, they'll be in CCTV, pretty much be anywhere where they could possibly make things a little bit easier for anybody who happens to be on the site.
And for Gaimin Gladiators, they kind of have the checkbox fully checked off for the most part. They've got Quartz for the vertical, they've got Arrow on that flank watch with the Nomad, especially since it can be pretty easy to constantly move around this map being relatively small. And once again, like you mentioned, Carter, having that roam game be a necessity for pretty much every site, no matter where you're playing at exactly on Border, but also still having Rudy on that Thermite, maybe getting a hatch opened up and also getting that back wall opened up too, leading in from Teller towards that courtyard side just to go in for that default plant. Depending on how effective Gaimin Gladiators can be in terms of removing the extension not only in the top floor but also that first floor, that could allow for a pretty easy plant. But if you still have someone set up in customs, they could definitely deny the plant, especially if no one's properly watching that position.
No focus on customs for Gaimin Gladiators just yet. Heavily focused on clearing out this top floor. A minute in, they've already started making their way into Armory, and there's already someone from Gaimin Gladiators outside of the office window, seeing if anybody wants to get aggressive or rotates out in front of it, or at the very least just later on in the round, cutting off a line to rotate down for Luminosity on their defense. Eddie not playing in CCTV like I thought he might. Instead, he'll be playing on East Stairs, where he has one singular keeper barrier stationed on the staircase, help him play aggressively on one of those doorways, and 3 in his pocket at the moment, waiting, likely reactively, to stop anybody from entering into the very spot he's trying to defend.
Aiming just taking their sweet time. A lifeline gets tossed out, potentially feed in some information, or maybe try to sway Luminosity to fall down and through that hatch to weaken the top floor presence. But because no one has immediately went in for a direct push just yet, Luminosity can still hold this top floor for a little while longer and maybe even instigate a gunfight in an advantageous position.
A one gunfight already instigated, Barring coming out on the losing side of that. Asian does spot him prone on the floor inside of Workshop, but unable to finish off the kill. He is aware of the Finka's position right now, and Barring certainly a little isolated from the rest of his team almost or less than a minute remaining, 55 seconds now, and Luminosity have not really been affected very much on this roam. They will drop, they'll start moving downstairs. Kicks will spot one. Wow! What a shot to land with the shotgun, a little bit far away. He is holding out on that top floor, but Eddie goes down, unfortunately, on that east stairs position. He was likely going to die, but this could be a 4v3, and it will be a 4v3 as the drone comes through. Court spots Kicks popping up behind that wall and is able to make it 4v3 for Gaimin Gladiators, but not a lot of time remaining. 30 seconds left. Asian off the site can use a very powerful angle, whether he plays in customs or plays in workshop. He's got one player to deal with, but Silent takes him down. Asian feeling a lot less pressure, but Luminosity as a whole feeling a lot of the heat the Gaimin Gladiators are trying to put down. Might not be a lot of time left, maybe only 15 seconds. The Gaimin's still in a very good spot. They can cover this hatch, make sure nobody rotates up the workshop, but never mind. He lets it slide. Nobody is watching directly on the plant. The plant goes down sure, but Silent is able to take down Rudy and knows that someone is on this top floor. Pings from the alibi clone actively giving intel, albeit for a very short amount of time. That influences Asian's play, allows him to start moving to that top floor, and Silent can provide some pressure, albeit a very slight little bit down below that hatch. Fortunately for Asian, his retake efforts are stopped by somebody all the way in CCTV. Now Silent has to bait and hope that both players give away their life. One does fall. There's not a lot of time left. Less than 10 seconds remaining for Silent to get this defuse down, and Arrow's playing patiently. He's not trying to give it up. He throws a flashbang that will not dissuade Silent off of the plant, but unfortunately the time has now passed. The moment is gone. Whether or not Silent gets this kill, Gaimin Gladiators have got their first round on border.
And although it took a very long time for the roam clear to eventually happen, it surely did, which provided enough vertical pressure to make sure that that first floor presence that still didn't come back into sight really had no option to properly. Yeah, of course we had Silent slip in through, just barely getting past the rotate hole and trying to reclaim bathroom, but still it was far little too late. It allowed that diffuser to go down, post-plant position, and the retake was now required by Luminosity, where they are met with air jabs, long positions being held, crossfires on top of that too. Just not enough resources left to win out that 2v2 properly when you had someone by themselves on the top floor and another person still trying to worry about that vertical coverage that was being established quite well by Gaimin Gladiators, especially since they were still able to eventually eliminate Kicks before he became too much of a problem. Yes, he did find that one shocking kill, but eventually when the mute fell, that was all of your top floor presence gone and allowed ease of access for Gaimin Gladiators to eventually get ready to go for that bottom floor play.
Still unfortunate as well, because the alibi Silent was able to work his way past that hatch. Maybe if he still had an impact in pocket, might have been able to open up that wall and take down the planter behind it. Still overall, okay first round by Luminosity, but now we need to see something a little bit more. Of course, they had a pretty good roam up top. Of course, as you said, once it fell, there wasn't really much stopping Gaimin Gladiators from moving into the site, especially on that hatch drop in the bathroom, but there was still quite a bit of stall that forced Gaimin Gladiators to go in with a little bit less time in their hands. Kicks also moving from the mute to the Oryx, an operator that might be a little bit more suitable for the playstyle he's going for, and Eddie on the pulse as well. The heartbeat scanner to provide any intel to those players playing off-site, sitting inside of customs. You can see anybody rappel up and try to take CCTV.
And that vertical presence was one of the major reasons why Gaimin Gladiators was still able to hold on to that round and eventually hop into sight, get that plant down, and be in a winnable position altogether. So having the pulse to not only feed information early on, but potentially stop that vertical presence could be huge, but no, it's a direct rush in through the main doorway, already getting that plant down, but Kicks is able to deny it. Ferd is here to back him up, and just like that, it's a 5-on-3 with this hero play being completely stopped.
Excellent read by Kicks, able to spray the player properly, who's sitting in the smoke with the diffuser. Now Gaimin Gladiators have to retreat, rethink things. C4 does go out, but fortunately for Silent, the nade is already thrown. It lands at his feet, not able to recover his retreat from that position, or his fallback from that position. He goes down. So Luminosity hold the lead for the moment in man count, and Gaimin Gladiators not with a lot of options to start rotating through. Asian cuts down one all the way over by East Stairs, where Arrow and Quartz likely need to consolidate inside of Armory. It's exactly what they'll do, but after that, who knows?
Both players still heavily isolated. Quartz is going to be by himself just trying to work this vertical, and maybe the call can be given by Eddie just to feed in more information. Although they have nothing to directly counter out Quartz, as long as they have the heads up that they can potentially go on a flank perhaps, or just try to shoot back through the vertical holes, that could still be just enough to get that 1vx position. It seems like the former will be an option. Asian begins to creep his way up on that top floor, and he could have caught Quartz off guard if he hadn't just dropped down the hatch trying to go for a redemption arc perhaps. Arrow is very low on HP. He's eventually finished off here by Ferdo, leaving just Quartz in the 1v4. Spots out one and almost a second onto Eddie, but he's just in the better position. And now it seems like we've got the defense able to claw things back, and a pause is called as well, shockingly enough, Carter.
Yep, seems like we might have a little bit of a tech issue going on, so Luminosity will call that pause, and we'll take a little bit of a break. We get that sorted out. Of course, overall, Luminosity, they don't really have to reflect on much from that round, or at least they don't. Gaimin Gladiators might, but Luminosity saw a rush come through inside of Vent and Workshop, or specifically ventilation. Smokes go down, and even though Gaimin Gladiators thought they had it, fortunately for them, somebody was able to spray through the very smoke grenade they put down to try to cover the planter, and it gets denied. And Luminosity have a very comfortable lead throughout the rest of that round. But if maybe Gaimin Gladiators had taken their time a little bit more, the execute itself wasn't terrible, of course, given its ventilation workshop. There wasn't really active presence inside of ventilation. But if you're able to maybe get someone on sandwich window, maybe you can throw a nade down in a Silent's position, but still, that's a gamble that Silent can take, and if he's successful, Gaimin Gladiators didn't really have a backup plan, especially if Luminosity come away with a kill or two, which is exactly what they did.
And the one-off play didn't look too horrible, but again, it didn't really seem like Luminosity was getting properly forced away despite all those smokes and all the secondary utility that was being utilized as well to try and establish that plant position. So if we had just, like you had mentioned, maybe had someone go up above, that could have been potentially the saving grace for Gaimin Gladiators, but trying to put all their eggs into one basket, sometimes it just doesn't work out, and things are now equalized. We will potentially see Armory and Lockers in play once we get this tech pause resolved, but at least the competition seems pretty close so far in this best of one.
Yep, Luminosity able to answer back. We've not seen Armory a single time just yet. We started out on Television Bathroom, then went to Ventilation Workshop, and now what is typically viewed to be as the main site on Border and tends to be the most defender-sided. Don't have the exact stats up in front of me, but I know it was in North America last stage. Bit surprising that Luminosity opt to go for what seems to be almost kind of climbing the rate of, or the defensive win rate, instead of following it as it goes down. But hey, if they're able to win one on one of the more off sites and instead now try things on the main site, could bear well for their overall efforts. Also, we'll see, of course, maybe some more Azami play in CCTV like I hypothesized we might. I haven't seen many players actually try for what Eddie did in round one, which is put a Kiva barrier on main stairs, stock up the rest, and try to get aggressive on both of those doorways. But it seemed to be a little bit risky. He ended up losing his life. I believe he was the first one taken down in that round, though it was traded out a little bit later. Inside of CCTV, I think on Armory especially, that area with this operator could be very impactful.
Say, in terms of general time stall, when we saw Bathroom play, a lot of the seconds were burned away quite well by Luminosity, and it seems like the vertical isn't normally as powerful unless you have someone like a Buck, for example, trying to play underneath to get some of those site floors opened up, but you normally tend to see that full-fledged extension flush out when you have this top floor site in place, so things tend to be a bit more horizontal than expected unless you have somebody late rotate with grenades to just potentially try to kill somebody who's on the site to have that execute be a little easier put into your own hands. Luminosity most likely trying to go for that full-fledged extension once again despite the castle, but because it was their ban, I could imagine they are pretty comfortable not having to rely on those panels and instead can just bring out the Azami Kibas countless rounds after countless rounds.
And not something you have to worry about too much on Armory specifically with that Azami on the board. Castle Band is going to affect you more on sites like Teller's Bathroom. On Armory, not nearly as much. That Azami can just do so much work sitting inside of CCTV, as you can see. You don't even necessarily need to bring an operator with a deployable shield like we normally see teams do. You have a Warden, might see that go with a deployable shield, or even a Smoke come on the board if Azami is not in play, because she can put a Kiba barrier on basically the same spot that you would normally see that shield. You can allow for a lot more C4s or some different primary utility, as opposed to having to have a shield if you want to extend inside of CCTV.
I almost thought Eddie potentially saw Jolton with that vertical hole, but at least the hatch presence is there for kicks. He's going to find the entry on towards Jolton. The Iona gone, and one of your only sets of grenades. Seems to be flaunting a little bit about getting that early kill so foreign towards round number 3, but not that big of a concern, I could imagine, for Luminosity. The first minute just about over and done with, and it seems like Gaimin Gladiators definitely have to reevaluate their presence, at least on that first floor, and they might just end up fully committing on towards this top floor, as they probably don't want to have to worry about those vertical kill holes. It just costs them a life.
It's difficult to decide where you want to prioritize your efforts now. If you want to focus on office, all right, there's probably more diverse utility and more manpower, but if you want to focus on CCTV, there's sure one guy, but that guy is Asian, and Asian is on Azami. A very powerful player and a very annoying operator to deal with, even if you're dealing with a lot of attackers to try to clear out that spot. C4 and nade goes through, but neither have any particular large impact for either the attack or the defense. In fact, that reinforced wall is still mute jammered as well. So if Gaimin Gladiators wanted an easy opening inside of Office. With half the round now gone, all they get, admittedly, is a kill outside of Break Room.
They have to go direct at this point. And yeah, at least Kix is able to drop down through the hatch. Having no sets of grenades, they cannot break those mute jammers, so it'd have to be potentially a window hop in, I would suppose, or just simply walking down and through the regular hallway you tend to see. But not too sure if anyone's going to be in a good position to actually revive Kix, so it could end up becoming that 4 versus 4 position. What Gaimin Gladiators somehow just walking in through Office because no one was able to take that position Kix was currently holding, and because that Quartz sneaks up on Silent and brings back the man advantage for his team with help by Arrow.
And he will start getting aggressive. Will down the player with the diffuser and finish him off outside of the site as well. Knows that Twitch is playing on that doorway and puts Quartz to 1 HP. Not really able to recover, and most importantly, sure, Eddie might be pressured and Eddie might be dead. Ferda has a very powerful angle watching that hallway, but now with no teammates, officially speaking, with Kix fallen, he is still able to get a kill. Sees Barring hopping into that window. Another player retakes the angle, but is that Quartz on 1 HP or is that Arrow something different? Quartz does peek and Quartz goes down. Unfortunately, loses the fight. Again, on that 1 HP, very easy to deal with, but he can be revived. Ferda only tags him a little bit. He'll go for the swing, but there's a reinforcement in his way. So back to a 1v2. No diffuser in hand, but that changes quickly for Gaimin Gladiators. Sees one rotate across the rotate. Quartz watching this angle. That means the coverage, the player watching, he's only on 1 HP. Ferda might be able to pre-fire this or instead C4 over, but the moment is gone. He still has the kill, but we're in a post plant. He's got to land the pre-fire or land the reaction shot. Just see the leg, but Quartz gets him quicker. Post-plant, albeit just barely, but still the second round for Gaimin Gladiators.
And a perfect call made by Gaimin Gladiators as well, acknowledging that no one took the place of Kix over inside of Offices, so they immediately hopped into the building, got that portion of the map in their back pocket, and immediately began to hit the site. Luminosity were nowhere near prepared for that, allowing them to retake the man advantage, get the back wall opened up, and eventually allow themselves to go in for a post-plant position. And with that slight lack of information, it seemed like the Warden just wasn't able to connect the final kill onto Quartz despite him being so low in HP. He was able to get the final 1-for-1 win, and Gaimin Gladiators will retake the lead, as I believe Armory will be reattempted by Luminosity, as I don't really blame them. They got the first opening duel, and if not for having no presence in Office after Kix was down, they could have potentially stopped gaming for a little while longer.
For Luminosity, as you said, it's a little bit easier of a solution. I doubt they'll be able to get Jolton as easily as they were able to last time, so there will be an extra set of nades likely in the mix that Luminosity will have to worry about. But if they just have someone more actively watching that Office doorway, Quartz, unless he wins the fight, to be fair, isn't able to take that control as easily. But even if then, at least in that case, Quartz would have to fight for it and not just catch the Jaeger completely off guard, and by extension, Eddie completely off guard, even though Eddie managed to survive until a little bit later on. So it makes sense for Luminosity to retry this. They won't even change their setup all that much. It's all the same operators and, well, in all the same positions as well.
Aiming might not try to go in for that immediate first floor pressure, at least on that portion of the map closer towards Office. Maybe they want to utilize those grenades early on and then get that triple opened up, have someone rotate later on perhaps, just to have a little more bang for your buck. Maybe having Arrow play in that vertical, he does have a couple of explosive lifelines that could not only be used to break the Kiba barriers, you know, from that horizontal position, but depending on his placement of those lifelines, can be vertically as well. But seems like he'll just opt for doing things the normal way, just trying to set up on that top floor. And for the most part, no one has tried, you know, moving their way around in through bathroom, for example. But Jolton is kind of playing near that back bus. He could either walk up the ladder, maybe go near Archive's window, or also play for those grenades we tend to see over near the vent doorway as well, or vent window, pardon.
Another attempt to get some nades down on this triple panel. One goes through, but it goes too far, unfortunately. Gaimin Gladiators, last round and this attempt as well, have so far not been too successful at getting these mute jammers. The second nade stored in the pocket if whoever's on east stairs at the moment, so not even an attempt just yet. Smoke grenades going through to try to burn any potential ADSs. Second nade cooked. It's gotta land this time, and it does. We'll be able to open up that triple panel, put some pressure on Kix's position, and he'll drop pretty quickly as a result.
There goes the Nitro Cell. Well, it connected, in fact, does just enough to down Quartz, but I don't think Kix has that information. Instead, he's just utilizing his own Nitro Cell opening with that verticality to watch over the window, which inadvertently stops Quartz from getting revived until a finger boost potentially gets popped. But if he hears that could be a potential wallbang to shut down that Twitch. But no, she has no idea. Kix is looking through his own impact hole, and because of that, despite the revive on the Twitch, they will still go down, and it still grants Luminosity the first opening duel.
Excellent read by Kix, excellent intuition right there, just to wait, play it safe. He does get the first pick, even if it came a little bit later than he was hoping, and not even with the same utility that he downed Quartz with. Eddie also going down below, both starting to rotate up. Probably for the best. Gaimin Gladiators have taken control of Fountain. They're outside of vent window as well, ready to start pushing into the site. This time, Luminosity are ready for it. There's even more control for Gaimin right now. They don't have to catch anybody off guard with this. Rudy starts going in for the plant. Asian gets one, but the bomb goes down successfully. Post plant entered by Gaimin Gladiators. They can still play off these angles fairly effectively. Outside of the window, Rudy inside of the site. A little bit of a tight shot to land on Eddie, but he might be able to make it work. Arrow certainly does. Arrow certainly makes it work. With the Asian and kicks both falling down. Great reaction by Rudy as well, though it costs him his life and some of his HP just before that. Eddie's made it onto the diffuser. Knows someone is peeking, but Jolton smokes him on that angle. Silent now. In the same shoes as Quartz was last time on 1 HP in the 1v2. This time, whereas Quartz had a little bit of a better position, Silent's got to move, and Silent unfortunately falls, just like Luminosity did previously.
Once again, a small lack of utility and really any proper way to push out Gaimin Gladiators from those power positions they were holding. Having Jolting on the window, top up near Archives, having someone watch all the way down outside near that back office balcony, and also still having full office control to begin with for Gaimin Gladiators. It all just stacked up against Luminosity. And despite having a pretty decent early game, still wasting tons of time and resources, and even winning that opening duel, they still couldn't slow down Gaimin Gladiators enough once they got those vital portions of the map in their back pocket to begin and tease and almost or completely confirm the plant as well. It just seems like Luminosity, they're always missing that extra step towards the final moments of these rounds. They just really can't put things together properly during that end game, even when they have the lead, technically speaking.
3 plants we've had so far, by the way, for Gaimin Gladiators. Every single round they've won, it's been in a post plant. But the fact that we even have 3 plants on a team's attack, pretty great, if I'm being entirely honest. Not something we see too often in the Challenger League, but I've really enjoyed it from Gaimin Gladiators so far, even though they have not exactly been winning these opening duels either. Both Armory rounds, Kicks got the opening pick onto Jolton and Quartz respectively, but even then, Gaimin Gladiators have not only been able to get the bomb down, but still win out these post plants, sometimes by angles like we saw last round, and sometimes by, well, I guess Quartz having the more advantageous angle, even on 1 HP. Tellers, it was a similar story. They were able to get in sight later on, but the coverage wasn't as adept. But again, despite that, while they were tripped up on this triple panel, John, Eddie does make for a very seemingly easy kill to start out.
Especially if we have Gaimin coordinate this properly. It only would take a couple of grenades to eventually flush him out. There's really only just a Syria gate, I believe it to be, to actually have him removed from that position, since there are no ADSs or magnets on the board currently speaking. And for the most part, it really seems like there's been just a lot of solo plays happening here by Luminosity, really not able to fill in the shoes to properly keep Gaimin Gladiators at a safe distance for too long of a time frame. And seems like for Gaming, they're actually picking up the pace a little bit more, hopping inside of Armory at a decent time frame and already beginning to push back a couple players on the side of Luminosity, but they still struggle with that entry, as Asian will just barely one up, barring the Finka is gone once again.
Yep, able to win his 50-50 downstairs with the Finka gone. Big pick for Luminosity to start out. They don't really have to retreat that much. Everyone is already playing in their position, so you could just continue on as normal and, of course, be weary of any attackers starting to sneak their way in your back line or split the defense in two. Both Quartz and Rudy up top right now with getting some vertical play and now some nades as well. 3 mute jammers all destroyed with 1 singular nade. Rudy's on Maverick. He could have just bypassed that anyway. Second nade goes through. Down goes Kicks. Excellent nade play from Gaimin Gladiators in round number 5, but great fragging prowess from Luminosity in round 5 as well. 3 bodies now gone off the board for Gaimin Gladiators. Might have 1 nade left for Rudy, but not a lot of time to make up for what you've lost.
No, it doesn't really seem like there's much hope left unless Gaimin Gladiators just try to get hyperactive and just try to go for 50-50 gunfights and hopefully win them out in the next 60 seconds. They've got a little bit of time to drone pardon, but not a lot of drones themselves that are left on the board. Rudy has one in his back pocket, and that's about it. And with this lurk game still being alive and well for Luminosity, once we see Gaimin Gladiators begin to work their way down in this first floor, it really seems like this could be lights out. Again, especially if they cannot isolate and get those 1-for-1s down properly.
Rudy will pull out his final nade, toss it over to the rotate in between bathroom and workshop. Sadly, does not work. Goes wide. Arrow will rotate over to Rudy's position. Probably the best chance they have. Just send him down the hatch. I said both will fall, but through the wall, Eddie takes down 1. Likely, Ferda also trying to get in on the action with that DMR. Arrow has picked up the diffuser, knows that Ferda might peek with that DMR. Does see the head of Eddie as well. sees two players peek him at the exact same time, but will be Luminosity's second round on the board, as once they got into that 2v4, they just sat back, waited, and took the final 2 kills once they came to them.
Yeah, they still had great aggression in the early game to kind of avenge Kicks once he had fallen over near the the fountain slash archives position. But I guess Gaimin Gladiators got a little too carried away. They expected once Kicks had fallen that that roam game had begun to drop down the hatch like we saw previously when Tellers was played on round number 1. But that was the polar opposite. We saw Luminosity double down, and although they have been going in for a lot of solo plays from time to time, especially going in for those gunfights, they're still mechanically capable enough to win those 1-for-1s, making it ever so rewarding when they are put in those 4v2 positions. And Gaimin Gladiators are kind of at a loss for words and at a loss for players as well, because they really were just out of options in that 4 versus 2. They had pretty much no information left, a singular drone left in the Maverick's pocket, and pretty much no proper utility either to really facilitate any kind of execute that would actually be long lasting.
Last round, Luminosity able to maybe find the silver bullet to Gaimin Gladiators' success in the attack so far, which is if you're just able to whittle down their man count early on, it's very difficult for Gaimin Gladiators to work that back. If you deny them their win condition, deny them the opportunity to get that bomb down or to even get close to a position to put that bomb down, you can make it work. Albeit it's only happened really, genuinely, one time, because even then on Vent, it required somebody spraying through a smoke grenade to deny the bomb from going down in round number 2. Here, round number 6, a little bit of a different story. Ventilation Workshop, again, where that rush happened, but John, I don't really see anybody going for that same play.
Makes sense. I mean, it completely backfired, and then Gaimin Gladiators were just like, well, I guess we gotta try to find out another way to attack on this round, so they'll go for something more default, trying to maybe establish that vertical presence early on like they have been attempting in past rounds, except having Eddie still on that pulse, put in the right position, he can still feed tons of information for his teammates, and having, a couple extra nitro cells in their back pocket, having 2 in total, that could most definitely allow for a couple of kills to happen a little bit easier than expected. But as of right now, Eddie seems to be solely focusing on anyone trying to work their way in through either passport or also detention, as he's trying to wait to see if anyone overextends past that double door to maybe work an early kill.
Early kills from either side just yet, as Gaimin Gladiators still a minute in, trying to figure out where exactly they want to enter from and how safe it is. Those directions they want to go are all cleared or don't have anybody by them. Want a Rooney Gate on top east stairs. They'll just try to burn that fairly quickly. Unfortunately, no Yana on the board for Gaimin Gladiators, so they will have to expend either a smoke grenade or a drone or something to burn that Rooney Gate. Your Yana clone, of course, you can just send it on in, press 4, walk it in, but here you have to actually expend some utility. Beyond that, John, minute 30 now. They got east stairs and I think some pressure inside of office as well, but beyond that, nobody breaking from Luminosity just yet.
Asian is still on that top floor, though, near CCTV, so this could potentially be a huge play to have once we get Gaimin Gladiators a little more focused on just trying to solely flush out anyone towards the site itself. I believe they've eventually droned out Asian, though, so he might just be in that do-or-die position waiting for Gaimin Gladiators to maybe just walk into his own death trap over near CCTV room itself, having those key barriers to play off of. But besides that, it really does seem like now that Gaimin Gladiators is aware of Asian's position, they seem a little unfazed and are still, for the most part, trying to hold off on this inevitable site execute, just holding those passive angles to make sure Asian cannot get away with too much.
Asian makes his presence known, puts Jolton down to lower HP, though it's Silent and Furta, both the 2 on Luminosity to strike, so Asian will remain alive on that roam, but it's the players on site right now with both utility and gunplay getting the most active. Everyone from Gaimin Gladiators now moving in, but Asian beams 2 of them, almost 3, but Barring is able to at least get 1 kill of his on the board before Gaimin Gladiators might just inevitably lose this. Wasn't just Asian, though. I think Kix might have climbed up that hatch. Now gives somebody else on the roam. Does spot one player going prone on the floor right in front of him. Unfortunate timing or unfortunate luck for Eddie in that regard, but now there's 1 player up top, 1 player down below. Sure, 2 isolated 1v1s, but separated by an entire floor. Now with active intel, or at least recent intel, given to Luminosity about Barring's position. Pretty easy decision to make. You could probably peek, and if you lose it, 1 player to rely on to get your team to 3v3.
And I loved having Asian just not give up at all, staying inside of that top floor position near CCTV, especially since he was confident in his own teammates from holding off the rest of the positions across the map. It didn't matter all that much of the vertical pressure was there looking in through one of the 2 bomb sites, because he still had to get that diffuser down and he still had to work those picks via the vertical. With the fact that Furta was inside of supply room and was able to kill the case holder, that wasted a lot of time, and that costed Gaimin Gladiators that decision of, well, now that Asian's still alive and we're not not able to deal with that site presence / lurk game properly, we might need to actually deal with him before he tries to flank us as we recover that case and eventually go for that execute. The overall solo plays were properly meshed with actual team play inadvertently as well, and it really did allow Luminosity to kind of take the bag and run away with it there on round 6.
3-3 half on border. Not great, not terrible. About what you want on really any map, but maybe could have hoped for better for Luminosity, especially when thought maybe you'd be able to get aggressive and make a lot of those positions work. Even then, they were able to get the opening pick a large percentage of the rounds. But even then, Gaimin Gladiators were able to generally recover once they started to piece together some site control. Now they go to the defense. We'll see what Luminosity, how they decide to play it. John, it looks like they're going to get the bomb down here with this lineup, but I doubt getting the bomb down is really the goal of the plan Luminosity are going for. It's kind of a means to an end.
I would really hope with, someone who can directly see through smokes and having a plethora of smokes that they would, at least be in a good spot to set up a plant. That would definitely make a lot of sense on paper. I'd like to say confidently here, Carter, as Luminosity, for the most part, are already attempting to tease at that rush play inside of Archives. There is a small roam presence on the board, but only a Nitro Cell in the pocket of Arrow, and he seems to be holding down the fort directly, just playing behind Archives near that bomb chassis and hatch. So really, there is no proper way to actually deny this defuse from going down in terms of verticality. It would more or less be those Echo Yokais and maybe a couple of lucky shots landed by Gaimin Gladiators, at least putting themselves in the right spots to do that.
Candelas go through. Kicks will send out a third before hopping in. Make that a fourth. Eddie gets the first pick, spraying down with that LMG. Not inside of vents, actually. It's a repellent boost sandwich in the plant inside of Armory. That appears to be, and well, certainly is the goal for Luminosity. The planter might fall down, but it's a 2v4 right now. Make that a 2v3 as Eddie does fall to the spray from Quartz's MP5 SD. But still some very good control attained by Luminosity, albeit coming out of it very bloodied in the exchange. Aring also now has control of the diffuser. Luminosity all trapped, save for Asian outside of the building. One outside on the ventilation balcony, and both Ferda and Asian now able to consolidate, but definitely might just be Luminosity coming out worse for wear, despite them having the man advantage.
Luminosity having to go back to the drawing board as they are really in no position to go for the same strat they had planned during that preparation phase. Silent, though, still able to win the 1-for-1 against Quartz, leaving just Barring alone in the midst of the bomb site. He may find one, but he's low in HP and has to worry about multiple different angles, some information being fed on towards Diana's position, but Asian still wins that gunfight, and Luminosity, although it was sloppy and although it was unorthodox, it's still a round win at the end of the day, so they start off in the right direction that second half.
Yeah, about as good as you can expect for a rush. I mean, not about as good as you can expect, but did seem like there were some lapses in judgment from Luminosity. There's some angles that weren't covered, and with that being the case, still able to come out ahead in the 3v2 and end up winning the round. Good showing overall. We have the Ying able to go in, start putting the bomb down, dies to a C4. I believe Arrow was playing over an office for a good majority of that, might be able to rotate on in, get a C4 over the top. Sure, somebody dies as well, but might have just been Luminosity trying to cover so much. We had the Glass looking inside of vents, and when the Candelas go in, teammates might get blinded, angles might get, no longer covered or fallen off in the chaos. Luminosity still able to win that out, just able to get a couple kills inside of vents towards the end of the round. Yeah, it was a little bit rough. They did lose control of the diffuser, but still overall a solid round to start out on the attack, and seemingly not demoralizing for Gaimin Gladiators, but definitely made them worried enough that not trying Armory again. They'll go down to Ventilation Workshop where they'll have to hold to the top floor, but not treat it like the site like they had to before.
No Warden in play, but thankfully Luminosity will not try to go for the exact same style of attack we just saw them implement on round number 7. They have a more util-orientated stack, to say the least. They've got the Flores or Terror drones, tons of flashes that he can bring as well, kind of filling in that gap of the one-man army one would tend to consider him as most of the time, and also still the countless LMGs across the board for potential gunfight advantages and some of those grenades as well. Things really do look good on paper for Luminosity going in for a more default push, potentially trying to go in that top floor and apply vertical, but they could also go a little more horizontally, especially if that roam game cannot fall back at an amp time.
First Keeper barrier destroyed and replaced immediately by Rudy. Unfortunate. Asian's efforts already done away with, but slowly whittling down the utility. That's the important part with the zombie. It's a war of attrition, but still one that can be won. Also, jail wall opened up by Luminosity, just getting some early angles or early utility play over on this side of the map, over on that western side of the map. Nothing concrete just yet. A lot of them will now rappel up to that top floor and start probing for any weaknesses inside of CCTV. They have plenty of nades to still deal with it. They have 3, but a lot of Rotera drones used on that middle floor, so if those nades go wide, there's not a lot of backup for Luminosity to clear out the top floor, and especially now that 2 of those remaining 3 nades are dealt away with by Arrow.
Well, he's able to at least find something on towards Eddie, and yeah, that does weaken the explosivity that we were hinting at earlier in the round. That could have really been a make or break here for Luminosity. Although the detention wall has been opened up, Quartz hasn't seemed all that phased and has actually retaken detention. If no one acknowledges this position by the alibi, that could be a huge make or break play, especially since there's still people on the rappel, but not able to net a single kill. But hey, at least he didn't end up dying in that position to cause some sort of equalizer. It's still the main advantage at the end of the day for Gaimin Gladiators.
There you have it. The Warriors Luminosity, I was about to say, getting some control uncontested, but there is Barring to prove me wrong before the words can even leave my mouth. As Berta walks into Fountain, Barring takes him down. So Luminosity, not only a little bit more uncertain once they start moving forward into the map, they're down a man. Minimize it a little bit once Barring is caught on the rotate back, but Jolton has not been droned on that top floor. There's still an X factor in the round for Gaimin Gladiators. Somebody go on a flank, take a gunfight. It's exactly what Jolton will do. Asian hops off his drone, but it's just a second too late. Jolton's already got the drop on him and takes down the Flores.
Perfect information being fed throughout pretty much the entire round by Gaimin Gladiators, and now it seems like Luminosity, they're just at a standstill. Kick's the only one left alive, and while he does have a couple vertical angles, it is a 1v4 he has to fish for with only 30 seconds left.
And really not much he can do at this point. Breach charges, no secondary utility to maybe cut off lines of sight or blind certain attackers. Has some Selma charges as well, but with 25 seconds left, all you're going to be doing is trying to make the most with the AK-12. Even then, probably will not be enough. I'll give it the good old college try, at least attempting to look through these vertical angles and find anybody. Think the defense might have spotted him before he even sees a single inch of a remaining defender. Any one of the remaining 4 not found. C4 goes out as well. Might as well use it, even if you don't get a kill. It's only 5 seconds left. Kicks is well away from the hatch to drop down to sight. Gaimin Gladiators will even things up 4-4.
And the fact that they had perfect information as to how exactly Luminosity was attacking on that round and their positioning in tandem with that information, it went a long way for Gaimin Gladiators to not only find the entry, but make sure Luminosity could not be comfortable in almost any position. They struggled heavily with clearing out that first floor position near custom, and they also struggled quite heavily with just trying to get really any top floor presence beside just the ace player of Kicks, who was pretty much by himself and then completely by himself, just going in for a couple of breach charge openings to maybe find some sort of kill once things had already gone quite grim in a 1 versus 4. If we continue to see proper team play and proper readjustments like that by Gaimin Gladiator, we could end up seeing them retake the lead and potentially maybe even bring on match point, but I might be getting ahead of myself as this match overall has been incredibly close, hence the scoreline.
I wouldn't say you're entirely getting ahead of yourself, especially since Gaimin Gladiators were able to keep it as close as it was in the first attacking round for Luminosity. Sure, it was a 3v2 that Luminosity ended up winning, but still able to drop Case inside of the site and make a round that seemed to be decisively going the way of Luminosity, a lot closer, just by able to get a few key engagements. Winning the subsequent round. Definitely still a good argument for Gaimin Gladiators to remain in the series, and even if you were convinced by it being 4-4 right now, there's one more reason why you shouldn't start tuning out just yet, and if you think one team is going to take it. Now that Armory is gone, Ents is gone as well, they have the option to go back to Armory, but instead they'll try out Tellers and Archives, and we'll see something fairly similar to what Luminosity did, except Rudy, he'll probably be playing in CCTV this time, and I don't think we'll see him do what Eddie did over by East Stairs.
Luminosity with both the Buck and Sledgen selection definitely does hint that they want to fully put a lot of their eggs into the basket of this top floor, which is not a bad idea at all. You can get a lot done with that vertical pressure. We saw how much Gaimin Gladiators were able to gatekeep Luminosity away from retaking the site, just simply based off of them being able to stall enough time, get that vertical down, and cover the plant with relative ease, turning things into that inevitable 2 versus 1, then a 1 versus 1, I believe it to be. Luminosity, though, despite having a lineup very much orientated towards wanting to get that top floor control as early as possible, they still wanted to get the detention wall opened up to weaken the lurk presence later in the round, but that mute jammer just being ever so evasive, it's gonna deny that position from being opened up for a little while longer.
Well, to turn their attention to maybe more active positions held by Luminosity. Not to say they shouldn't focus on customs or passport at all. Of course, Jails will maybe little bit of a room away from that area itself, but still an area that you should try to get control of. Quartz doesn't get control of anything, but seemingly a very lucky shot out over towards Army Balcony. Not only takes down the man with the diffuser, but takes down the sole hard breacher for Luminosity. So they were hoping to open up that jail wall later or at a different point in time. Can't do it anymore. There's no primary hard breacher and no secondary hard breaching for Luminosity either. But their main selling point has always been the potential for fragging power in these rounds. Asian will answer back on a Jolton, who's not been having the best game so far, and also, to be fair, in comparison to the Hibana, doesn't exactly give the same amount of constant utility that Kicks would have given.
Gaimin still holding on to this top floor for dear life, and seems like Luminosity might want to just end up moving a floor lower, trying to hop their way in through Server Room. A Nitro Cell's tossed out, but the team play is most certainly there for both Asian and Eddie. They isolate out Arrow and retake the lead. Barring falls off screen as well, and all of a sudden, Luminosity, they have potential to go and get this plan down in a pretty safe position.
And they've got control of the site. There is one player up top that they need to worry about peeking one of those hatches, but Rudy is more concerned with, well, things other than peeking that bathroom hatch. He's trying to worry about the top floor. Right as he drops down one hatch, he dies, and Quartz meets a similar fate. Luminosity regained the lead, as it seemed like Quartz opened things up quite well for Luminosity, or quite well for Gaimin Gladiators, but Luminosity, they answer back and don't lose a single body after.
And only having one portion of the map they really had control in, that being Armory, it did seem like Gaimin Gladiators would be able to stall out just enough where that vertical play wouldn't be oh so potent. Instead, Luminosity, they just went for a more basic idea of just trying to hit the site directly, hoping that they could potentially just stack bodies at the problem, and it most certainly worked. Air was able to fall, Barring trying to relocate got shut down as well, and we then immediately had a 4 versus 2 with the diffuser going down and hatches and rotates being watched quite eyefully by Luminosity as well, sparing no extra chances for Gaimin Gladiators. A really good read and good change up by Luminosity outright, but at the very start of that round, things were definitely concerning, especially when Kicks had died, not even getting opened up, or not even opening up any of the extra hatches that weren't prematurely opened up by Gaming, or even that jail wall we talked about earlier, Carter.
Yeah, but they're able to make enough work happen by getting that kill on the top floor, then rotating later on, recognizing the situation they were in, and also recognizing that if they take Ventilation Workshop, they've done enough work on that top floor. It might be a little bit unconventional, and the areas controlled by the attack aren't exactly what you would normally see on a Teller's Bathroom attack, but enough to make something work, and something work, well, that's exactly what they did. Now going to Armory, which we saw LG win in that very first attempt with that Ying, Glaz, line and what have you rush, all the operators on the board that weren't able to get the bomb down and that had required to... What wasn't a clutch in terms of man count, they had the advantage, but felt like a clutch in terms of tone and what Gaimin Gladiators had going for them, mainly diffuser control. That's where Luminosity will go back to. We won't see the Ying, won't see the Glaz, won't see the, well, anything except the Finka that they had before, but of course we'll see it. It's Finka. Luminosity will instead likely try something a little bit more thorough and not as quick, and likely going to focus a lot on CCTV if I were to guess, based on where Gaimin Gladiators have been playing.
Yeah, Armory was really reliant on those one-for-one gunfights we tend to see Luminosity strive for in a lot of their attacking strategies, but this time we have something more normal, not something as atypical as, that glass kind of play with all the smokes and Ying Candels, especially since Luminosity probably figure, well, Gaming, they're going to want to bring out a Warden to hard counter us, so that just forced them to pick a slightly weaker operator. Although Warden can still be very impactful on the round, you can bring a Nitro Cell or a Shield, both very strong in their own manner, and also having the 1.5 MPX. I mean, that's something a lot of people really enjoy, just having those long-range optics to potentially work some picks and slow down the offense for a tad bit longer, but it seems like for Luminosity, they are already having their eyes on the prize, trying to force back Barring, get him outside of CCTV, just to try and establish that map control and maybe even work some sort of pick, as Fern is also playing vertical as well.
Interesting enough, they don't have Jolton playing aggressively inside of CCTV like I thought. They have a Wamai who, behind a deployable shield, will usually play behind that CCTV desk, but here instead he's playing inside of 90. Maybe now Jolton will start retaking the position I thought he would, but even then, he's not playing behind the desk. He's playing right next to Barring. He's kind of weaving in and out with those key barriers, providing a lot of different denials of angles and also effective shields he can play behind, but thanks to this buck, you have the ability to create holes down below and take down that Azami, that powerful operator with that regenerating utility early on.
Ooh, Thankfully, the Finka boost is able to revive Asian, although I don't think we're going to have Arrow try to reattempt to even try to confirm that kill if we saw no Finka boost being popped. So it's still that 5-on-4 after a beautiful display of verticality and team play done by Ferda and the rest of his team trying to flush out that position in CCTV. They'll eventually do so, now gaining a good chunk of that western part of the map. There is still a slight extension over an office, but for the most part, it seems like Luminosity wants to fully commit in going for an armory style of attack, almost if you would see that in rank. They're just waiting on Eddie to maybe get one of those back walls opened up. That way they can allow for better coverage when going in for that post-plant position.
Well, they have CCTV control, so it's possible, but just use their final nade to try to take down the hard breach denial on that wall, so dealing with maybe the half-wall position or somebody playing in sandwich is going to be a little bit more difficult unless they decide to rotate, and it appears they might just be going for that. We see that main wall opened up, but Ferda's starting to look over towards that office position, though there's still the majority of their forces looking over towards armory wall as the focus of their execute for the final 50 seconds. Ferda might just be trying to lurk in this position, catch a defender off guard, maybe even go 1-for-1, but still cause enough chaos that Gaimin turn away from the breach and look towards him to give Luminosity a bigger opening to make work. But right now, Rudy's able to make it happen inside of the site. Ferda does move on in. He will only keep it even, though, as Gaimin Gladiators have done a good job so far at answering back these Luminosity kills, but it's not Ferda, it's actually Eddie who's able to make it work on main to cause that chaos and give the 2v1. Ari now creeping up the long haul, but oh, slap down by Eddie. Luminosity go to match point. What seemed like might have been a clutch into the making, but instead, Luminosity looking a little bit better on the attack than Gaimin are on the defense.
And once again, a fabulous read by Luminosity as well, understanding that if we all just kind of charge our way in through Armory from the back wall and that single doorway, we're probably just going to stop dead in our tracks trying to go for that defuse setup. So instead, they had Ferda fully rotate across the map, waiting to go pushing through Archives to deny one of those many lines of sight you can tend to see across the objective room, and also having your ace player creep their way up metal stairs to actually work a pick over near Africa and also that metal detector position as well. It completely threw Gaimin Gladiators off guard, as they were for the most part only expecting that play to work in through that back breach I was just talking about and the single doorway not too far behind it as well. Again, the adaptability and being able to thrive off that gun skill has really gone a long way for Luminosity, now winning 2 rounds in a row and granting themselves match and series point.
Everyone from Luminosity, save for Kicks, who lacking a little bit on that hard support, but not going to flame him too much. Even though, you know, he's playing ace and he can sometimes have his good games, but everyone from Luminosity really showing up. Of course, Asian not having, like, a mind-blowing performance, but for Asian and the role he's playing, exactly what you want to see. Eddie and the role he's playing, exactly what you want to see. You could say the same for Silent, you could say the same for Ferda. Gaimin Gladiators, I mean, not so much. We have Quartz doing okay, but beside that, Arrow's the only one even close to positive, and he's only close. He's 7-7 right now. The individual performance and I guess the team performance technically for Luminosity has just been a lot more consistent. Going to Ventilation Workshop, Gaimin Gladiators were able to win it this time, so despite maybe the poor individual performance, could still make it 6-5 if they can just recapture the glory they had previously.
The positioning was top-notch by Gaimin when they were defending this site last time, especially on the top floor, also because Luminosity did waste a good portion of seconds clearing out that first floor near detention. They try something different, though. They still want to go in through that first floor, but instead, they creep their way in through Tellers immediately in Bathroom, and it seems like Gaimin Gladiators is none the wiser. This could be huge for Asian. His position caught by the audio call, not utilizing his hell system, and because of that, Rudy shuts him down, and Gaimin Gladiators, they still take the lead off that one-off play.
I think Rudy just spotted him on that blue cam watching Bathroom. As you said, Asian had not activated his health scanner. You see Rudy hop on cams and then immediately hop back off to deal with Asian creeping in through Bathroom. So either excellent call or read or just good luck by Rudy to take the first pick away from Luminosity and take it in Gaimin Gladiators' side. Right now, you can see they're stopped completely, or at least stalling for the moment, trying to reconsider their avenue, as it seemed like a sure bet with Asian moving into Bathroom, but now going to have to regroup and decide again which way they want to go.
Ooh, beautiful shot landed by Quartz as well. Eddie tries to clear out Customs, but it's just a little too late. The fallback still goes down, but in the 5 versus 3, Gaimin Gladiators, they are more than willing and more than able to give up some of that map control just to make sure they keep that man advantage alive and well.
Ooh, nice shot by Ferdo, land on a Quartz down inside of blue. But still a little bit of a ways to go before Luminosity are in the driver's seat of this round. They have some very good potential vertical destruction in their hands with a sledge and a buck on the board. Minute 15 seconds left as well. Not many drones active, unfortunately. Only 2 between Ferda and Eddie. The one still in Eddie's pocket. They might just be able to make it work. Diffuser dropped inside of CCTV. Eddie will go up to grab it, but fortunately, Silent falls around the map as well. So we have that 2 potential soft destructions between Ferda and Eddie, but not really the opportunity to use it. Ooh, a missed opportunity by the Sledge down inside of main lobby. The one realized and grasped by Eddie. Catches Jolton rotating into CCTV and cuts him down fairly quickly. Ferda also spotting one, but not able to secure him like Eddie did. Only putting Arrow down to low HP, but use the nade to try to close out that opportunity. They are still alive for the time being. Sees one more nade to use, but he's swung by the Warden. Unfortunately, that nade goes a little too wide as a result. Barring retakes up top, and Arrow finishes it off. One more round for Gaimin Gladiators bring us to our first overtime of the day.
And just to think that small mistake made by Asian going that long of a distance, that one play that Luminosity was really relying on to start out in the right direction to confirm they win this matchup 7-4, gets completely halted just because the Warden got on the right cam at the right position, or at the very least heard the Nook getting control of Bathroom and trying to creep their way in through sight just because that Hell scanner was not activated. There goes the first entry, and Gaimin Gladiators still having a fantastic position overall on that top floor. It still continued to slow down Luminosity as they were already on the back burner in a 5 versus 3. Gaimin Gladiators then on their own accord began to fall back, and despite having some extra map control and a couple of nice 1-for-1s being traded back and forth and Luminosity having a 2v3 at one point, it still just was not enough to close the round out. Gaimin Gladiators still continue to hold on in this best of 1.
And it's not out of the realm possibility that we could see Gaimin Gladiators go to overtime. They might have only won Vent so far for their defenses, but Tellers still required an adjustment by Luminosity in the round. That, of course, they were able to get the bomb down and were able to win out the post plant fairly comfortably after that, but it was the site that seemed to trip up Luminosity the most, or at least where Gaimin Gladiators were able to trip up Luminosity the most. Quartz able to start that out with an opening pick as well, something that Gaimin Gladiators have been able to do fairly consistently on their defensive half so far, as opposed to their attacking half, where it seemed to be Luminosity had the better go of things. So the defense on both sides favoring those opening duels on Bathroom's Tellers, where that just might be the difference between overtime and a regulation win for Luminosity. Gaimin Gladiators will have to hope they don't give that opportunity away.
Lineup seems to be pretty normal for Luminosity, not trying to go for any shenanigans on a round that could potentially allow them to go home with a victory, all the points they could potentially get in this matchup, or potentially have overtime on the drawing board as well for Gaimin Gladiators, who have been, once again, keeping this matchup very close despite some of their early unsuccessful plays during the beginning of week number 1. They seem to be keeping things pretty much down to the wire a lot of times and able to comfortably adjust to some of Luminosity's trick plays they've been bringing out time in and time out. But when we've seen that more default style by Luminosity, they can really come out on top, especially if they are just able to gather tons of information and still be able to put themselves in the right spot to work that pick, or at least force Gaimin Gladiator to fall back early on, because they've been very reliant on that top floor map control.
Site is ripe for the taking for Luminosity right now, with nobody directly in it, though I think that just changed right as I said that, with somebody rotating back, but potentially a kill going Luminosity's way. I mentioned how they don't want to be too free at giving away that opportunity or that opening, but they just very narrowly did, with Arrow losing almost all of his HP. He'll rotate down, recovering and licking his wounds, and throw a Cade Claw on that wall, potentially destroying some X-Kairos. No, it only gets one panel, and that means that Kix can still open up the opening in jail that he wanted to. Arrow, unfortunately, not as successful in that endeavor as he was hoping for.
No more Cade Claws altogether as well, so if need be, you could potentially try to get that single wall and Tellers opened up if you want to go for that kind of attack. It seems like for now, the Luminosity is not going to really worry about that. Probably just happy that they were able to stop the Cade from slowing them down in terms of getting that detention control. Speaking of Cade, though, he is still lurking around over near Customs. Very low on HP, though, almost withered away to full 0 health, but he's still alive and able to live to tell the tale for just a bit longer as the rest of Luminosity begins to work their way a floor higher. Again, this top floor presence is almost a necessity most of the time when attacking through Bathroom and Tellers, so not only getting this middle floor presence, but also being able to potentially push back players like Jolton, like Barring as well, could go a very good distance here for Luminosity.
Silent will be the first member of Luminosity to even think about taking an engagement on that middle floor, but he'll back off of it fairly quickly. Maybe for the best. Quartz and Arrow both ready and waiting with open arms inside or just a little bit outside of Customs for anybody to peek or walk through that doorway. Minute 15 to go, and Luminosity still reluctant to take a lot of these engagements. Eddie now moving to that top floor, John, but beyond that, still very hesitant to start moving forward.
still having a roamer up on this top floor as well. Even if this roamer falls, wasting as much time that we've already seen on the board is definitely going to go a pretty good distance here for Gaimin Gladiators altogether, as it seems like for the most part Luminosity, they're just self-stalling themselves at this point. Even Arrow remaining alive instead of Customs as well. It just seems like a lot has been missed out greatly by Luminosity, and for the most part that could cost them the entire round unless Eddie can work this pick against the Aruni.
Only one drone remaining for Luminosity, so you can tell things have not been going well for their drone economy, gaining that intel, and if you're trying to make things quick or even make things average pace, having a rough drone economy or low drones will certainly hurt you. Asian does get the first pick, finally finishing off Arrow and the damage he suffered very early on, so Luminosity able to get a pick, get that opening. Now going forward with only 20 seconds left, still very winnable for Gaimin Gladiators, but excellent nade by Silent. Almost turns on somebody pushing up East Stairs, but Baring has worked himself in a tricky situation. Only 10 seconds left, but he should give this to Luminosity. But still, Rudy and Jolton, all they have to do is play the site. All they have to do is wait. One pushes through. Jolton takes both of them down, but Ferd has made it a 1v1. Only 2 seconds left. He spots the alibi, but Jolton reacts in time. Not a great performance up until this point, but you can count on him when it matters, as he sends game into overtime.
Eventually, we saw the roam game for the most part dealt with on that first floor, but the retake being attempted by Baring, it wasted just enough time to guarantee that Luminosity were not going to be able to reclaim that round as a victory because they just took way too long in the early portions of that round. The mid game was a little all over the place for both Luminosity and Gaming, especially when we had both Asian, I believe one of the grenade players on their side as well, net a kill on towards the Mamai stuck in Passport. But again, that lack of time and that lack of information as well fed right into the hands of Baring. He didn't just fall back and whimper into sight. He valiantly worked his way back up top, wasting even more seconds like I had mentioned, and allowed his anchor players altogether to have a much easier time stopping Luminosity from trying to get that plant down overall and just winning their gunfights, because towards the final 5 seconds, Carter, Case was relegated to the ground. They had to get active, but they just simply had no time left to do so.
Now, unfortunately, that will cost them a regulation win, at least 1 point on the board, and also that'll be a Gaimin's, even if they lose, it'll be their first non-regulation loss of the season so far. As Tanner said, it was only one Playday, which they suffered those losses, so obviously plenty of time for them to recover in the grand scheme of things, but also here as well, plenty of the time to even get their first win on the board if they need to. Just a couple more rounds. It's been 3-3 halves for both sides, the attack and the defense. Though certainly the defense has had the advantageous position in getting these opening picks. And if that is indicative of anything, if it's indicative of maybe some further control, or at least a higher percentage of winning these rounds, Gaimin Gladiators will likely feel a lot more comfortable knowing, or even subconsciously knowing, that is the situation they find themselves in. See a little bit of an extension inside of CCTV right now, as the site is Ventilation and Workshop, the one tried and true site Gaimin Gladiators had on their defenses.
And with Gaming understanding that Luminosity are very gun and frag orientated, they've been remaining a lot more passive in that early game position, and honestly forcing Luminosity to be quite worried when they eventually have to go in and just try to gain that map control without any sort of advantage in terms of that man count. Their momentum definitely begins to slow down much more in comparison to when they have that 5 versus 4. But as I say it, of course, you know, Quartz gives me the caster curse. He tries to go in for the aggressive run out, but it still works. Silent falls. There's absolutely zero coverage to help this man out, and Quartz as well shuts down Asian on the upside down rappel. I talked about their patience, but it seems to be a virtue not needed in round number 13, as Quartz off the rip finds 2 kills for his team.
And so impactful at that. I mean, I literally just mentioned that the defense has typically been the one to win the opening duels on border, but not really quite like that, especially taking down some of the, or at least Asian, who typically one of the more consistent ones on Luminosity right now, but also that Finka as well that Gaimin Gladiators no longer have to deal with or worry about. Kicks on lower or reduced HP as well, down to the 50 mark instead of being fully eliminated like Silent or Asian. The Gaimin Gladiators, if they want to even start rotating back to the site, probably shouldn't do it entirely, but can certainly do it a lot more comfortably now.
Seems like this Quartz able to do his job just fine. Jolton wants to get hyper-aggressive as he knows nothing is on the line, essentially. Gets rid of Ferda as well, and the 5-on-2 being even more challenging to come back from in comparison to that 5-on-3. Eddie just now enters the building from the top floor, and, well, Kix and Eddie, they're probably just scratching their heads wondering, well, how exactly do we come back from this position, as you have the roam game already fallen back, so there's no chance of finding a free 1-for-1 potentially. They have to just face their fears head on this point, just try to go a floor lower. They almost spot Rudy, but he's able to out-duel Kix with the Alda, forcing Eddie essentially in that 1v1 unless he can revive Kix.
He can certainly revive Kicks fairly easily. Recovering the diffuser, though, with Eddie or Rudy watching, might be a little bit more difficult, but Maestro gives up the angle, so Kicks can pick up the diffuser, put it in his back pocket. There's only a couple members of Gaimin Gladiators on reduced HP, but still unlikely that LG can come away with this one. A couple nades might do the trick, might even down Rudy, but that being as undercooked as it could possibly be for a grenade, Rudy just dodges it fairly easily. The Gaimin Gladiators now can just play their positions, wait, open arms for Luminosity to make the trek down to the bottom floor. Maybe just stay upstairs, depending on LG decide to save their KDs or not. Second nade goes on in, but finds no purchase on any Gaimin Gladiators defender. The bullets of Kicks do. He's able to find the first kill, but not the second as a whole for Luminosity, as Eddie's cut down. And Kicks, ooh, nice shot on Quartz. Will give him that. But so far, the kills have only been impactless for Kicks row. He makes his way down east stairs. Knows one is inside a passport, but he's waiting in that position, waiting to peek, and he finally swings and gives Gaimin match point.
Well, we did mention how effective we can have Gaimin Gladiators just in general on the defense, but normally that's because they force Luminosity to kind of waste a little too much of their own time, but I guess with the fact of having a lot of that passivity early on by Gaimin Gladiators, it forced Luminosity into a false sense of security, allowing Quartz to simply just run out and shoot people when they're in vulnerable positions, and then your upside down repel player of Asian just simply cannot clap back quickly enough to actually stop the alibi dead in their tracks. If we maybe had seen Quartz fallen, that would be a 4v4 position, not completely difficult, but on top of that, not only having Quartz thrive on that top floor, but Jolton joining in on the fun as well, guaranteeing a 5-on-2, and like I mentioned earlier, at that point, I mean, you can try to go for vertical, but once Gaimin Gladiators, hear the sledgehammer open up a part of the floor, or at least just see it with their own two eyes, they can just step back, pick a new position, and force Luminosity to waste even more of their time when they're already low on the man advantage, and the seconds are just continuing to wither away as we progress throughout that round.
Now, Luminosity will go to the defense, and again, go to Ventilation Workshop as well, just like Gaimin Gladiators did just a few seconds ago. This was also the site that LG had the most success on, as both teams, actually, the only defensive rounds they won were 2 times on Ventilation, 1 time on Tellers. Funny how that works out, but Armory for neither of these teams has been particularly good, which I just find interesting. That doesn't influence anything that I'm about to say. Just a stat that I thought you might find interesting. What I was about to say, John, though, is on match point, we see Jolton go to the Nook. He's been able to heat up a little bit more since that 2-7 he had just a couple rounds before overtime. Now Jolton, I think, might feel he's been unleashed.
Not a bad idea, especially if Luminosity begin to get in their own heads. Something as simple as just, walking in through a big portion of the map, just having your scanner activated could potentially net you some sort of early damage like we saw in the hands of Quartz, just on a different role and different ideology outright. Seems though we're not going to see that Nook play unfold just yet. Maybe waiting for a better moment to strike in through after Gaimin Gladiators already does a good portion of that heavy lifting in the early game as they begin to try to work their way up and through Armory. Maybe Jolton could actually begin to work his way in through Archive's door to have that tag team against Silent, which could be a huge way to solidify some sort of early kill for Gaimin Gladiators.
Well, it's the early kill for Luminosity, unfortunately, if you're a Gaimin Gladiators fan. Ferda looking up through the floor, finds Jolton crouch walking in as that Nook, so Silent's position, while still a little bit tenuous, a lot more solidified now that he doesn't have to worry about anybody pushing in from Office and Archives. Asian also hitting a huge flank inside of CCTV, finds Quartz with his back turned to CCTV. Silent also getting active, cutting down barring outside on Armory balcony. It's a 1v5, and we're only a minute and 15 into round number 14. It doesn't look like Arrow has a chance in hell of coming away with this round. Keep a barrier in front of his way, 2 in front of his way, actually. 1 to vault in through the window that he now destroys, but a player down below as well. A flawless round to send us to maximum overtime. But with Gaimin Gladiators on the defense, which even though it's been a 3-3, both times now on the defense in overtime, they've got the early round and have succeeded as a result.
One hell of a clapback if I've ever seen. When Gaimin Gladiators thought they were able to end out a round quickly, Luminosity just said, hold my beer, and granted themselves the potential to go the full distance and maybe have another opportunity to win their essentially map pick, since they are the ones to get the final ban, get that Oregon off the board, and end up going to one of their more favored maps over on stage 1. Still, though, the performance by Gaimin Gladiators outright has been fantastic. Finally getting a point on the board altogether starting out for week number 2. Definitely not the worst situation outright, but definitely being able to, I guess, shut up all of us in the talent pool would be a very a good grin on Gaimin Gladiators' face, I suppose, because I don't think any of us voted for Gaming to actually win this matchup. We had LG across the entire board, and the fact they were just able to bring this one back so closely has been definitely a good sight to behold, I'll have to say.
Definitely And yeah, we did all predict Luminosity, and I think one thing that a lot of us will consider going forward is, it's still only one game on Playday 3, a lot of time for things to change, but Luminosity have had a string of close games, extremely close games, and if they end up losing this one, they'll actually be negative in the record that they have so far. Again, most dominant scoreline that they were in was a loss at 7-4, but others have been 7-8, 1-7-5 at one time, but still, Luminosity have not been having the season we thought they might have with Asian coming on the roster. I think a lot of us thought that 1-3, if they lose this game, would be a 4-0, similar to a lot of what they had for last stage. So definitely a surprise to us through and through, even if Luminosity end up winning this game at 8-7. Right now, of course, Gaimin Gladiators on the defense, which they might feel a little bit more comfortable on. Going down to Tellers, I do believe. No, actually going to Armory and Archives, a site that they haven't won a single time.
Well, that's unfortunate. Not having the rotate hole properly work, even though we had an impact grenade thrown directly at it. You still have the hatch drop to work off of, but we have seen Ferda just play underneath with vertical, so yeah, we might have the Wamai basically just signing his own will at this point, and losing someone as impactful as Barring, just in general being that X-Factor player, and also having those magnets to stall in terms of that utility burn, it could be a really good thing to hold on to towards the final moments of that round. But hey, at least it doesn't really seem to phase Gaimin Gladiators all that much, because Rudy across the way still gets rid of kicks, and your Twitch is already gone in the first minute. A great start indeed, and a good aggressive play made by the Alibi towards site.
Ferda's vertical is still alive to try and bring this man advantage back. Also, late rotate made with a shotgun instead of the impact, so the Wamai now has an escape route, but he's cut down fairly quickly as Luminosity jump into CCTV. Down goes Barring inside of 90. One player potentially outside as well that I think LG are worried about, but that might just be a Prisma outside instead of Rudy.
90 seconds remain. Rudy's still trying to get aggressive, wanting to work this pick, but he gets droned out at just the right time. So he might need to try to fall back and just work around the shield instead. So still playing relatively aggressive, but having to fall just a bit further back, giving some slight edge to Luminosity as they still try to put the pieces together by having some presence over near CCTV and still having a good chunk of their offense just beginning to rotate around a bit closer towards the southern side of the map.
Yeah, they knocked down one domino, but still waiting for the others to fall. They've acquired CCTV, but not much pressure in office just yet, and still certainly the control of Gaimin Gladiators. Haven't opened up that, or at least haven't opened up a lot of substantial openings in that armory wall. They've opened up a hole, to be sure, but in terms of actually leveraging it for an execute, still to be seen with how heavily Rudy is contesting it, trying to deny LG from being able to move into that balcony or into that breach. They'll still be there for the time being. Ooh, just spots Eddie, but so many whiffed shots. A very long angle, to be sure, and the MX4 Storm kicking a little bit too hard. And that's still a 4v4 with Gaimin Gladiators playing the waiting game for Luminosity to see if they'll make their first move. Another engagement, similar to the one failed by Rudy, but certainly Ferda taking a lot more damage. One just on the right side of that window. But Ferda might not know. He might not realize, but he still gets the kill anyway. Excellent read, taking down Jolton. Now taking the advantage. This is what they needed, but Arrow drops down. Not only does he have the shotgun deny the entry, he's got the C4 as well. Even if it's not that exact spot, this could be 8-7 for Gaimin Gladiators if Arrow isn't dealt with, or they don't even know about his position. 10 seconds now, moving on in. Luminosity not having the control they want. The C4 goes wide, but 5 seconds left. It's a 2v2. Silent has to get both of these kills or deny them for just long enough. Sees one to cross, but he can't get the kill! He makes it to Ferda in time. Silent even gets off the plant, but Gaimin get their first win.
And just barely securing it, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that were able to claw back into overtime, stop the 7-5, and at one point 7-4 victory as well, and take the lead once again, securing those entries, forcing Luminosity to stay on their toes, and for a couple of rounds, or even a good portion of those rounds, Carter, actually beat Luminosity at their own game. And once we saw just that very hive mind-esque style of play, what it seemed to be for Luminosity, they just were not able to really outmaneuver Gaimin Gladiators in a way where they could actually still win the match altogether. And although it seemed 10 billion IQ to go to border a map that Luminosity were essentially hiding in stage 2, it backfired. And although it took all 15 rounds, Gaimin Gladiators, they upset everyone and take the win 8-7.
And obviously, this is a very good win for Gaimin Gladiators. Quartz
Absolutely.
in particular, getting 17 kills to end it out. Very impressive performance for him, and still a very good win overall. But I think a lot of us might be a little bit more reticent to pick LG in these predictions. It's only been 4 best of ones, but so far they have, even though these games have been close, not been meeting our expectations, which were admittedly high. But still, for this roster, I think a lot of us are still left a little wanting as we approach the end of the first Playday of this weekend. But that's enough for John and I for right now. We'll throw it to the desk to break down Gaimin's first win in Challenger League Stage 2.
Moving through this matchup, I don't think this is what anyone could have predicted. Connor, I gotta say though, I know that we split each half 3-3, but Gaimin Gladiators, by the end of this match, they just seemed to get better and better and start working as a team better and better as it went along. It was really impressive to see this growth in game.
Yeah, for the side of Luminosity, their successes were in kind of like small bursts. You would see like 1 or 2 plays, like that huge Asian play that you're actually going to see across the stream right here. Boom, it's a double kill. But then for the side of Gaimin Gladiators, it was a lot more consistently good overall rounds and overall adjustments to the play styles of Luminosity that allowed them to find that success. For the latter half of the game, Gaimin won quite a few rounds in a row. It was 6-4 at one time, and then all of a sudden they found themselves up 7-6 in OT, and then they were able to pull that victory in the very last second, sure, by the skin of their teeth on the last second of the last round overtime match point. But those adjustments, that ability to change playstyle at a moment's notice, and overall just read into how Luminosity wanted to play this map was absolutely amazing from Gaimin. And this is what we wanted to see out of this roster that is definitely too talented to be in the relegation spot right now.
Well, Tanner, the other thing too that I don't know, it's kind of getting to me is if you're Luminosity, this is a must-win game because you've lost 2 games against the other 2 teams in this league that are supposed to be your comparables. So you'd think from that point out, every game, not only do you need to win because of the points, but you should be winning to show, hey, we're in the conversation with those other 2 teams. Dropping a loss like this in overtime when coming in they were the heavy favorites, this is a tough one for Luminosity.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a team that's trying to make sure that they're staying in the top 4 position that says they secured in stage 1, but that was only like a 1 or 2 point difference between them and 4th place. So now they're in a position where they need to start racking up these points. They need to start being a little bit more consistent and pulling out these wins. Like, and I don't even want to fault them on that much. Like, they're not playing all that bad. Like, they're playing pretty decently. But I find like in these overtime matches, what I'm seeing consistent between them versus Gaimin Gladiators and them versus Rent Free is they're like stalling and they're not taking these risks. Like it's overtime match point, round 15, and what do you see Rudy doing? You know, he's swinging the breach, he's trying to get picks inside of CCTV, and you're just not seeing that at all coming out from the side of Luminosity. And it's just like, you know, yes, as a team they might be playing a little bit better on their attacking half, so they might have these great one-off plays, but when the meat and potatoes of overtime are there and you need to step up, you need to perform, you can't be hesitating like this. That last round we saw Luminosity spend at least a minute inside of CCTV wasting their own time trying to figure out, you know, do we go left or do we go right? Do we go through, you know, armory breach, or are we going to wrap around through office breach? And what ended up happening? They lost the round on time. And it was just that hesitancy that you're seeing from them, which has not been consistent. Like let me back that up. It has been consistent. And we saw that in stage 1. Like they're a team that like just pushes at the last second. I want to see them be more decisive. If they be a little bit more decisive, they're going to pull out more round wins. This is a very talented roster with a very good backing, org backing them up, a very good staff. I want to see them perform a little bit better, but you know, my hat's off to Gaimin Gladiators. They showed up today in a big way.
I mean, hey, they forced Asian, who we've been hyping up so much, to go -8 on KD and -5 on entry. So his stats are definitely going the opposite to the moon. They're going straight down into the earth. They're going down indeed.
This is definitely one of those games that I think, you know, 8-7 in overtime is exactly the scoreline says it all for what happened within the game. Now, I'm really excited because I'm going to get the chance to talk to Quartz about this matchup. It's been a while since I've been able to chat with him. Quartz, big win for you guys. This was a nail biter, but this really seems to be the culmination of a team with a lot of great names, including yourself. And it seems that your teamwork is finally working. Are things clicking now with you guys?
Yeah, we don't really know what happened the first week, but we definitely were not in sync, and then we've been working like a lot on that this past week, and it showed a little bit today. So yeah.
And not only is it the first win after now this is your 3rd match in, but it's against a projected very good team in Luminosity. Is that a big confidence boost for you and your crew?
I hope so. I mean, we have 2 tough matches tomorrow as well, so we know that this weekend was really like a make it or make or break deal.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I mean, we can snowball with this win and then put up some good performances tomorrow.
And I mean, we all had Luminosity going into the matchup. You guys proved all of us wrong. One of the things that we thought, though, was we thought Luminosity had a very good map veto, but obviously going to Border, you guys were more than competent on Border. Was it against what we saw? Was it actually a map veto that worked in your favor? Were you happy to go there?
I don't know if the internet is bugging a little bit, but it's bugging a little bit on my side. But
sorry.
it definitely, I mean, we were confident going on Border. We've been working on it, so obviously like confident with it. But I thought the Border was like, or the defense at least had a lot of like holes in it, and yeah, we took advantage of it most of the time. So yeah.
Well, as I said, massive win for you guys. Congratulations again, and I mean, hopefully we'll be chatting tomorrow. Rack up a few more ones.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we're having a little bit of connectivity issues there, but
yes,
I mean,
most definitely.
Can we give him a break? The man's has got 37 kills so far on this stage. Like let's just give him a break. The man's doing a lot of work.
Yeah, I think he's probably breaking his own internet with his performance. So I think that must be what it is. Okay, that was one crazy matchup. We've got one more to go on the day. Another one that I've been personally excited for. These are the two big ones at the end of the day that I was most looking forward to. When we come back from the break, it's going to be Took the Kids taking on Rent Free.